Welcome to the 38th meeting in public of Richmond Governing Body. Welcome, Happy New Year. I have a script to read out at the beginning of each meeting. Before I do that, can I just say I will attempt to keep us to time. For those who haven't been in this rather large and echoey hall before, toilets and things are out there on the right. There are no fire alarms planned. If the fire alarm does go off, keep up with me as I go out through one of the fire exits. In relation to questions from members of the public, CCG is committed to openness and transparency and therefore wishes to conduct as much of its business as possible in a session that the public can attend and observe. Although the meeting is held in public, it is not a public meeting. This means there is no opportunity for the public to ask questions apart from that offered at the Chair's discretion, and there is a specific slot at the end of the agenda for this. Governing meeting is also being video recorded. The clues are the two Daleks at the front there. As part of a commitment to make information as accessible as possible, the video will be put onto the website within a few days of the meeting. The CCG does not allow other recording of the governing body unless by agreement with the Chair, and nobody's asked me, so I haven't agreed. The CCG has a protocol setting out how it will conduct its meeting, and this is available on our CCG website. I am aware that some colleagues may be on call, but if you're not, can you just put your mobile phone to silent unless you wish to be embarrassed in front of the committee and the public. So, minutes of the 37th meeting, shall we take them page by page for matters of accuracy? So, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, think I can reassure the committee that we are working the direction of travel, to use that terrible expression that we have been doing in Richmond for some while, of integrating, investing in primary care, working across organisational boundaries is reflected in the NHS plan. And no doubt we will all have time to read the several hundred pages of it at our leisure. I'm going to pass on now to the Accountable Officers report.
So, thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. And I will just add a little bit to that, in the respect that, yes, it did only come out yesterday lunchtime, the long-term plan for the NHS. And I have read it, but we will need to do there's quite a lot of detail in there, and we will need to do quite a lot of work just to understand what that means for us. And what we will do is bring a further discussion back to the governing body when we've had some time to do that. Also, it was the long-term plan, so it was the overarching headlines of what the priorities are and how we will work together, but it didn't have details around the planning processes for next year and the money, which we are expecting to get today, we hope. So we will also be bringing back to you some more detail around what that means when that comes out. There are some key messages in there, and I think, you know, you've already mentioned some of them, Graham, but the idea of working at an integrated system level, so working together with our providers, with our local authorities in a different way going forwards is really clear in the plan. The investment in primary care, networks of practices working together around 30 to 50,000 already, so early in the new year, and I'm already broken. And there's a lot of information in there about how we will prioritise mental health services, both for adults and for children and young people, and also primary care, but also community services, and making sure we invest upstream and downstream for the population, and we're supporting them in the community in a different way. Cancer services, clearly we have to do better around early diagnosis in cancer, and there are some clear messages around that in the long-term plan as well. I would suggest that people read it. It is quite long, but it's not as short as the 5-year plan, but it is for 10 years, so that is about double the size. It's probably a bit bigger than that. But it is well worth reading. There's a lot of detail in there and specifics around some areas, and it talks about how we could work better on prevention and health improvement. So I think it's definitely the direction of travel that we've been taking. We will now have to analyse all of it and see what that means for us, but we are definitely, as Graham says, going in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Any questions or queries from anybody so far? Okay, I'm going to hand over to Tonya for the report that you have in front of you as attachment B.
Thank you, Chair. A few things from update to the governing body members this time. Winter Communications and Engagement Campaign. Across South West London, we continue to work with health and care partners to deliver a targeted winter communications and engagement campaign. The campaign has been discussed at both South West London Urgent Care Transformation Board and the Kingston and Richmond A&E Delivery Board. We also run a CCG internal communications campaign to recruit staff to be winter champions who will help share the winter messages with the public, and we're encouraging our teams to take part in that piece of work. Throughout winter, we are also promoting the national NHS 111 campaign, which seeks to drive understanding of the role of NHS 111 and to increase the number of people calling NHS 111 when they have an urgent but non-life-threatening medical need. This national campaign focuses on those groups who are particularly high users of A&E, such as parents of children 0 to 4 and young adults 20 to 29. And last month we launched phase 2 of the National Winter campaign, which focuses on promoting community pharmacies and reminding people about the 8-8 extended access GP service and how to access it. The impact of this year's campaign will be measured against the work we did in South West London last year, and we will look at the impact of the campaign materials on indicators such as attendance at emergency departments and flu vaccination figures. So just to say, generally, it's been challenging, but we're maintaining a fairly good service through the A&E department at Kingston Hospital to date, so touch wood. We haven't seen the levels of flu and norovirus that have been seen in previous years. So, and West Middlesex as well, I think, is reporting a fairly good position. So generally, the ED's department seem to be managing, and the flow seems to be working. But we obviously keep a high overview and oversight of that piece of work. Moving on to Brexit, CCGs have been asked by NHS England to identify a board-level lead to undertake an assessment of risks associated with the EU exit by the end of January. We're not exiting by the end of January, we have to do this by the end of January. As the issues will be similar across CCGs in South West London, Jonathan Bates, the Director of Commissioning Operations for the South West London Alliance, will take the lead on behalf of the 5 CCGs. And we've been asked to undertake a risk assessment on a number of key areas, such as the supply of medicines and vaccinations, medical devices, workforce, etc. So we'll be working with Jonathan to make sure that the risks, any local risks we have for Richmond are reflected in that risk assessment. We continue to be committed to development, both our governing body and our staff. Commissioning team has held a number of master classes over the last couple of months on areas of importance such as public health performance and public and patient engagement. And the governing body held a session on public and patient engagement at the end of last year. And I'd like to thank everyone who attended those sessions because they are worthwhile and they support the development of our organisation. And then finally, I just want to congratulate Kingston Hospital on their award for staff retention and wellbeing. Kingston Hospital has been named our Health Hero winner in the Staff Retention and Wellbeing Employer of the Year category, and that's for outstanding commitment to staff welfare. This award is organised by Skills for Health and is used to celebrate unsung healthcare heroes from across the UK. But congratulations to Kingston Hospital for gaining an award. That's all I have to report this time, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the governing body members? Okay, so moving us on then to item 2.1, which is agenda item C1 in your pack. And Fergus, I think you're going to take that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to ask the governing body to discuss and approve the recommendation to form a committee in common from the existing Integrated Governance Committee in Kingston and the existing Quality, Safety and Performance Committee in Richmond. As we've talked about earlier, the important work that we do together and at scale in the system, we have an opportunity through the development of a committee in common to both work more effectively across the system, but also to reduce duplication from the system in terms of how we organise our quality, safety and performance in Richmond. Attached to the paper are the terms of reference that we have proposed. These have been discussed with the chair of the two existing committees and the committee members, and they've broadly been accepted as a helpful way forward for us to organise our work for assurance back through to the two governing bodies. So the committee is asked to consider the terms of reference and to approve that recommendation.
Thank you very much, Fergus. Questions or queries from other members of this committee, this governing body? So obviously this is in the direction of travel that we've been going on for some while. We have a local delivery unit that works across and services committees both for this CCG and Kingston CCG. It seems only common sense and economy to actually streamline these. Does anybody else hold a different view? Okay, I think you have the unanimous approval of the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So we will start that work going forward from the 22nd of January as the date of the next committee in common. Thank you.
Moving on then, item 2.2, South West London Finance Committees in common and their terms of reference. Is that James?
Right, so as people are aware from previous discussions, we've now got up and running the committee in common for finance committees. We've had 2 meetings so far. This runs sort of concurrently with your existing finance committees. All this is really seeking to do is to sign off the terms of reference, so this needs formal sign-off. So they've been through legal advice, so we've got legal advice from Capsticks on them. They've been through a couple of iterations with the chairs of the finance committee, and the only real tweaks we've made are around deputisation to make sure we can maintain choracy, particularly around the GPs. So we've tweaked it rather than having definitely a GP from each CCG at each meeting. We require a minimum of 3. So, but that can then gives us a little bit more flexibility just to maintain choracy. So what we're asking for today is just to get some formal sign-off of these. They've been approved by the committee in common.
Thank you very much. So the details are in your papers. Did you want to add anything, Bob, as probably the lay member most cited on this?
And I've been acting as chair for this. Yes, this is working quite well. I think it's very engaged. I think everybody is being pretty open and transparent at these meetings as well, which I think is part of this process, and to be actively encouraged. I'm quite impressed with the progress that we've been making, quite frankly. Yep. So really nothing else other than total support for it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from other members? Louisa?
I know that has been difficult achieving quality through GP attendance. So are we saying with the new framework that if we have, say, 3 GPs from one side of a patch, that would be quorate to make the joint decisions?
Strictly speaking, it will be that way. The only thing is it's not a joint decision because it's a committee in common. It's still a single decision, but done 6 times. So that's the difference between a committee in common and a joint.
We quorate if there's no representation from one of the.
You would still be quorate because
okay.
it still allows you to have a non-GP. But what we've said is we will require a minimum of 3 across the patch just to maintain that GP engagement.
I think this was all about being practical in how to actually administer this. It's definitely the intention of the finance people to have GP representation there because this is clinical commissioning and we do need to have, but we don't have those skills. We need those skills from the GPs. But this is the only practical way in order to be able to conduct business, quite frankly.
Any other comments? So I think we are happy to approve those terms of reference for this committee. And anybody not happy? So I think we can take that as a unanimous decision. Thank you, Joe. So item 2.3, the Safeguarding Children's 17-18 annual report, which, as people will recall, was on our to-do list at the start of this meeting. So I'm going to hand us over to Kieran. Not even Kieran.
So I'm Fergus. Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide assurance to the governing body that the CCG is meeting its statutory obligations with regards to safeguarding children's arrangements. I will apologise, this was scheduled to come in the autumn. However, with the scheduling of a variety of governing body papers and also a change in our designated nurse role over the summer period, the report is a little bit later than anticipated, so please do accept my apologies for that. The CCG does have a duty to make arrangements to ensure that their functions are discharged with the need to consider safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children, and we're responsible for ensuring that our commissioned services, including NHS-funded services provided by non-NHS organisations, take account of a wide range of legislation and statutory guidance which has been issued through the NHS and other agencies. So the purpose of this report is to provide the assurance to the committee that we are meeting those obligations. Within the report, we go into some detail regarding our safeguarding governance arrangements, enclosing how we have our clear lines of accountability, confirmation that our policies for safeguarding and safe recruitment are in place. The training of staff is appropriate not just within the CCG but also within our providers. Our interagency working with local authorities and indeed the local Safeguarding Children's Board is actually very good, and our designated nursing team provide leadership for a number of subcommittees and groups within the local Safeguarding Children's Boards. We have effective arrangements in place for information sharing, and that has developed over the current year as well with the development of the Child Protection Information System, and that we do have access to the appropriate expertise of designated doctors, designated nurses, and named doctors, and so on. There are a number of areas that we have been progressing over the last year in terms of a particular focus on Violence Against Women and Girls Partnership. There's a short section contained within that. And the emerging area of female genital mutilation as well. As regards serious case reviews, there was one commenced during the time of the report, but this has not been concluded yet. It is a lengthy investigation, a lengthy complex investigation. It's anticipated that will be published in the next 2 to 3 months. and I'll include that as an update through the Quality Safety Performance Committee or the new Integrated Quality Governance Committee. I note within the report then, in conclusion, that we do discharge the statutory responsibilities that we have, and I've included a number of areas of focus that we're working on through the coming year, as in the year that we're in now. And important changes around the management of child death overview processes I will update further to the committee when they've been finalised in the local area. I'm happy to take any questions. But the report is there for your assurance that we're meeting our statutory responsibilities.
Any questions from members of the governing body?
And I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up. I think I'm interested to know the role of our safeguarding children processes and how we link in with education, particularly children within Richmond, of which there are a significant number who are in private education. Because, you know, I've taken part in a couple of issues we've had with particular patients in the practice, but I know it's ongoing with the safeguarding issues, and my concerns, I think, are that that is a bit of a gap. Not a gap, but I don't know that there's necessarily as robust a process as perhaps there is with children in state education. So I would kind of welcome thoughts on that, because I think that it is quite important in Richmond, but I don't know how we, you know, where our responsibility lies in terms of monitoring that.
Thank you, Kate. I think that's a really important point, and I think that's been recognised just not within Richmond, but more regionally as well, about the importance of the engagement of education in safeguarding children's arrangements. So over 1819, there has been a national publication around working together, which strengthens the engagement of education in the what will become the local Safeguarding Children's Partnership, as opposed to a local Safeguarding Children's Board. It's very clear within those recommendations that we need to enhance our relationship with both state-funded and private-funded education. Our designated nurse has done quite a lot of work with private schooling organisations within the Richmond area, because our obligations, whether they are state or private funded, are still the same with regards to safeguarding children. And indeed, the serious case review that I referred to earlier, which we're awaiting publication, is indeed related to a private school in the Richmond area. So I think it's important that we do strengthen that, and certainly the Safeguarding Children's Board wish to take that forward in terms of both its executive leadership, but also the subgroup structure underneath it, to ensure that we strengthen our relationship with the education sector.
I think I had one other point in terms of the statutory monitoring of children who don't go to school. What happen? Because I feel that, you know, I don't know who monitors that and whether that comes under safeguarding, but I think as a GP sometimes we're aware of cases where children aren't going to school, and, you know, to me it was highlighted that was there a completely robust process in how that was monitored and what happened about that. And I, you know, I sort of feel as if potentially I welcome your suggestions and making all of that quite joined up, because often that can be a sign of serious mental illness in children, and I think that is a safeguarding responsibility.
And Kate, to include that, you don't mean children are just truancing, you're talking about home education, because that's actually, it's very easy to decide to home educate children. It's not very well regulated at all, and so you know, there are concerns there, definitely. Is that what it includes, Birgit, is it?
So I don't think that's a specific thread of work around children who are home educated. It's not something that has been raised with me, and I may well have been raised with the designated nurse, but not been discussed with me, that I could offer some further commentary on that. What I would say is that the partnership work between the local authority and health is important within that area. And I think it's important, and this is part of our training and awareness raising with GPs, that if you have got safeguarding concerns, that there are appropriate professionals with expertise that you can access through our designated nurse, our designated doctor, and so on and so forth. So that should you have a concern, the appropriate channels are there for you to, in the first place, have a discussion if you're uncertain as to what to do, but the appropriate channels for raising a safeguarding alert if you do have a concern that you are confident is something that needs to be investigated further, then the appropriate referral channels are there. But the professional expertise and guidance, I think, is often very helpful, because talking through the issues or the concerns is as important as understanding what the next steps might be. But in terms of picking that up as a particular thread of work for home educated, I can take that back to the designated nurse.
Bob.
Can I just raise one question on the assurance from general practice? Because the comment in the report is that case conferences have been very low in Richmond. Is there any particular cause of that, or anything that we should be aware of? It says no. It just says it's been identified for compliance rate for the completion of GP report for child protection case conferences has been very low.
So this is item 16 on page 17 of
Exactly.
the report, and I did write out to colleagues a little while ago.
Yes, it does say that.
And thank you, Chair. That has been helpful in terms of raising the awareness of the importance of the connection with general practice with the children's safeguarding reports that are required. I think there's probably two main issues. I think when the notifications are received, they're often, from a general practice perspective, not timely, as in they arrive with a very short turnaround time frame, and I think that's unhelpful. We have raised this on a number of occasions with Achieving for Children and other partners, that it's important that the notifications are received in a timely manner. And I think the second part then is that attendance isn't always necessary, that the written report, phoning in, or a colleague from the surgery engaging with that process can be very helpful. Quite often there is some pertinent health information that might assist the programme. So I think it's important that timeliness of the referrals and the availability of GPs needs to be with sufficient notice. Letting somebody know that in 2 or 3 days there's a conference that they're required to attend when they have a fully booked surgery is not helpful. So I think it's work that we will continue to work on in the coming year to improve.
Liz, I think you wanted to add?
Although I'm not the director of children's, I'm a director on the AFC board, and I think it would be helpful for the governing body to raise with AFC. They now have Ian Dodds is now permanent managing director, so that they've now got some stability, and James Thomas has now arrived as the interim DCS. So I think it would be helpful for the governing body to raise, first of all, where the children's voice is on the governing body from the local authority, but some of the issues that you're raising around safeguarding. On homeschooling, I absolutely agree, actually, that it's a very closed environment. It's not regulated, monitored, inspected in the same way many services are. And it would be quite interesting, I think, to raise that up with Ofsted about how we protect children who are homeschooled. How is it regulated and observed? Because often, and it's anecdotal, people who choose to homeschool can have quite extreme or hobby horse type of approach to things. So it would be interesting to raise that question, I think, with Ofsted as the governing body, or through AFC to support us. And I'm very happy as the council director on the AFC board to take back any issues to the board as well.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
I was going to say, obviously for independent schools, they are all registered with the Independent Schools Association, so they will have very clear protocols around safeguarding. So I wonder whether they've been approached and this has been discussed with them, and their engagement in terms of this, I think, would be really appropriate. The other bit I'm going to kind of throw in here as well to mention is that with provider organisations, all workforce staff engage in active, regular clinical supervision appropriate to safeguarding supervision. I'm mindful that doesn't necessarily take place in general practice in the same way. So it is something that Andrea and I had talked about previously around looking at that as a model and an approach to looking at quality in practice. And I know that some other GP colleagues had expressed an interest in exploring some of that as well. So I'm just putting that there as I'm happy to obviously take that forward with your current designated nurse in Andrea's absence.
So, I mean, I think maybe I'm missing what you're saying. Are you saying that GP practices aren't trained, or we don't have enough? We could have better training, or could you elaborate a bit?
Sure. So with provider organisations, all staff who are engaged in working with children and young people will have access to usually monthly, 6 to 8 weekly safeguarding supervision for those children who might be deemed as vulnerable, who they're seeing on their caseloads. Yeah. And therefore, the same rules should apply across general practice, and that area at the moment is quite variable. So it'd be useful to sort of see if we could kind of look at that as an overall model, certainly as we go towards more of an integrated approach to care.
Any, Sue?
Thank you, Jack. Just a short comment. First comment is thank you very much for such a comprehensive report. And I notice that priorities going forward include working with the CCG, and I'm sure also local authority actually, on ensuring that young people, children and young people's voices are increasingly included in this area, which I'd just like to put forward as that something we'd like to monitor, and that's very, very welcome to see that, and that we're looking anyway to bring children and young people's voices more into the dialogue with the CCGs, and also obviously in terms of linking with the most vulnerable groups. This is an extremely vulnerable group. So I don't know there's more to say on that now, but look forward to seeing that more and supporting that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I think that's a really helpful suggestion. We did include within our AGM some of the work we've been doing, particularly on children who are looked after, and our engagement in that area. So I think it is an area that we've made some progress. As I mentioned earlier, the programme of work that is underway to transition from a safeguarding board to a safeguarding partnership, again, includes within that a substructure which I think will address some of your concerns about strengthening the voice of children within the safeguarding arena.
Any other comments? So I think on behalf of the governing body, thank you very much for a very thorough report. Seems to have spiked some conversations. The takeaway points I've got is the interaction with general practice. If there are issues there, perhaps I can be made aware of them after the meeting, and we can make that more streamlined and improve that. And I think there was some anxiety about homeschooling and whether we should clarify with Ofsted what the rules and regs are about that. And if it is as loose as it appears, that perhaps we raise our concerns in the appropriate quarter. Okay, I'm going to move us on then to item 2.4, Richmond's Health and Care Plan. And Julia, I think.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of today's report is to provide feedback on the borough event that we held in November, which a number of colleagues around the table participated in terms of both presentations and also in working with the different groups of attendees. And also then to describe what the next steps are in the production of the health and care plan and the revised timescale for that. If I just remind colleagues around the table that the CCG is working with health and care colleagues and the voluntary sector to produce our local health and care plan, which is very much looking at the 2019 to 2021 two-year actions that we're going to take together to deliver our local vision and priorities that are going to improve the local needs of the population and deliver improvements along health and well-being. We will have a little presentation halfway through, but if I can then take members to the presentation that's within the pack. So it introduces the first slide, number 2, introduces the fact that we had this event in Twickenham in November, and this was all about working forward with local people to start further work on the local health and care plan, which the plan now will be to produce a discussion document in March, which is 2 months away. The event was very well attended. We had people who we had recruited from local population, which were a representative sample of our demographic makeup, along with frontline staff from a whole range of organisations and community and stakeholder groups. And I think it would be fair to say there was a very good vibe in the room for the day, and the next slide outlines the programme as delivered with support by NHS Horizons. It was very much an interactive day in which we used various techniques to actually discuss the priorities, the emerging priorities as shown on slide 4, I think it is, and also look at how we move towards actually what are some of the actions that would make a difference. If you recall that the draft priorities are those that we've identified through work of reviewing the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, and also very importantly is the insights from local people and professionals with regards to services and the needs of the local population, and they are articulated down there. They're still very much in draft format, and the next few weeks will be to work to refine these. And they do build on a lot of our existing work. So if I reflect back on what we already are undertaking in terms of the Health and Wellbeing Board strategic objectives that we've had locally in Richmond and other local strategies, actually there is very close alignment, and it's how now we progress that, but more importantly, what actions we're going to take that will be seen and make a difference, that we can demonstrate an impact to local people, and that they feel that impact in terms of the provision of local support and care across, of course, children and young people and the whole life course. There are also some cross-cutting areas around the work of carers and the support for carers, but also in prevention and throughout the whole 10-year plan and the operating guidance prior to that. Prevention and early intervention and supporting people to self-manage are core objectives, and actually have been for us as a local health and care system as part of the Health and Wellbeing Board. There's a very good visual that's shown on the following page, and that shows some of the themes that came up from the day, from the discussion. For children and young people, a lot of it around the Start Well agenda was actually the whole schools approach, and how are we going to be really using and working with schools and across education, health and care to really support children and young people, particularly in terms of areas of well-being and mental health. There was a lot of a request for more information to enable us to navigate our way around the system, to actually be able to self-manage, to actually take some of those preventative actions and activities that actually will improve our health, and actually both physical and mental health, and actually sort of around lifestyles. And then a lot around intergenerational activities. How do we bring young people or all the generations together to be supporting, preventing loneliness, reducing loneliness and befriending. So what I'd now like to do, please, is just flick to the film that was made on the day. There were a number of media outputs from the day.